Ladies and gentlemen, I'll start off by saying something very nice to get in a good mood for what's to follow. This is about the 7th or 8th year I've been over here. And coming here, as my good friends like Jim gets there know, is like a shot in the arm to me. I don't know what cocaine and stuff does to some guys, but coming here and meeting all you does it to me. I always feel good. I always feel stimulated, and I get back home and my wife says it takes 3 months for me to get back to ground level. I'm here today ostensibly to talk about my philosophy of wargaming. Now that's a very generic title, that gives me a load of rope. I can talk about almost anything. See, so anything that you hear, sort of go along with, because in a vague sort of a way, it has some connection with me and with wargaming and with you and with all of us, because we're all in this together. Now, wargaming, I'll start by reading something. 2 men, long dead, coincidentally both Brits, began all this. They made it all possible for you and I and a whole lot of people to come to meet and to enjoy ourselves like this. Now, one was Robert Louis Stevenson, the British writer, born 1850, died 1894, and the other one was Herbert George H.G. Wells, 1856 to the 1930s. Now, I'll read a couple of things they said, which both indicate their dedication. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote, "A martial elegy for some lead soldiers. For certain soldiers lately dead, our reverent dirge shall here be said. Then, when their martial leader called, no dread preparative appalled, but leaden-hearted, leaden-heeled, I marked them steadfast in the field. Death grimly sided with the foe, and smote each leaden hero low. Proudly they perished one by one, the dreaded cannon's work was done. Oh, not for them the tears we shed, consigned to their congenial lead, but while unmoved their sleep they take, we mourn for their dear captain's sake. For their dear captain, who shall smart, both in his pocket and his heart, who saw his heroes shed their gore, and lacked $1 to buy some more." Now he's one of us, wasn't he? H.G. Wells, very familiar with this, I'm sure. Little war is a game of kings. For players in an inferior social position. I don't like that really. That just smacks of a sort of a little bit of snobbery. But anyway, we'll do it again. For players in an inferior social position. It can be played by boys from every age, from 12 to 150. So that puts a lot of us in. And even later, if the limbs remain sufficiently supple, it can be played by girls of the better sort. Who like boys' games and books. By a few rare and gifted women. Hillary wouldn't like that, would she? They were the men who floated the idea which moulded my personal philosophy of wargaming. I'm very proud in a minor way to have picked up the banner and continue their crusade. And when I go, somebody else will pick up the banner, dozens of people will pick up the banner, and it will flourish and wave just as well as it's flourishing and waving here, in the wind that's created by the enthusiasm that's displayed here, because this enthusiasm displayed here is magnified 100-fold in other parts of the world. This is just a minor percentage of the wargames of the world, as I'm sure you will realise. We're all here together, and this is the great thing about it. I'll get into that a bit more, because I have very, very definite ideas about what wargaming really is. And yeah, what is wargaming anyway? Is it a reproduction of combat in miniature on a tabletop battlefield? Is that what it is? I was at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst once, and Nigel DeLee, one of Chris Duffy's associates and fellow academics, said to me that when he had a war game with his cadets, it was exactly like real war. Rubbish. Can't be like real war. Oh yes it is. I said, what about the fear factor? They said, well, I put the fear factor into them. When you knew Nigel DeLee and you saw some of those big cadets, you know how stupid that was. Now, it is a game. You can't argue about it. It's a game. And it can't be anything more, for the simple reason that it lacks a fear factor. Now, I've been in a real war, and I'm not going to sort of give you yarns and make a big thing of this, but I just want to say, I know what it's like to be so frightened that you can't think straight, you can hardly stand up, you can't stop your knees from banging together. And you say to yourself, how can I be so frightened and still live? In real warfare, the conduct of everyone at the sharp end, from commander to private, is affected by fear. Fear is the overriding consideration of real war. That doesn't necessarily apply to general headquarters. I mean, you can take guys like Haig, who sent the British Army into the Somme on the 1st of July 1916 and incurred 60,000 casualties on the first day, and then continued the action for weeks afterwards. Or Passchendaele a few months later. Chigwell, General Chigwell, Haig's Chief of Staff, was driving through Passchendaele after the battle had started, and he was in a staff car and he was crying. He said, "What do you mean to say?" He said, "We sent men into this." He didn't know, he hadn't been there. Now compare standing at a war games table and being on a battlefield. I'm not saying that you don't feel some of these emotions at a war games table, but you feel them on a battlefield. You've got apprehension. You're wet. There's mud. You're cold. The enemy have thrown everything they've got at you. You've got rumours all the time. We're moving up to the other end, or we're doing this. We've never any rumours about going home. You've lost your friends. You're talking to somebody 1 minute, and you turn around, you go away, and somebody comes back and says, oh, Charlie's tank brewed up. I'm afraid he was burned to death, something like that. And this happens. And I can remember guys as clearly as I can remember my friends of today. And I can remember their names. Yeah, I can't remember people's names. I'm a physiotherapist. I can't remember my patient's name sometimes from Wednesday back to Monday. But I can remember the names of guys I served with who were killed like that. You imagine being inside a moving tank in action with 88mm shells flying at you and mines underneath, and compare it with moving a plastic tank on a war games table. I mean, there isn't any comparison, really, is there? And I have a theory about war. I had a theory when I was in the war that you got so miserable and so frightened that in the end you didn't really mind dying. You welcomed it. So I remember being up near Casino once and seeing a Scottish regiment marching up to the line, 6 o'clock one cold wet evening. And they had their kilts on and they marched along there in 4 or 5 one side of the road, all the way up with a piper at the head. We heard the piper, that's why we went to the roadside. And the look on those guys' faces, knowing what they were going into. And I'm sure that a lot of people don't mind dying because they're cold, wet, miserable and unhappy. Now, this is all very dramatic. It's very dramatic. But what I'm trying to put over is that you can't get that atmosphere into wargaming. So wargaming is a game which we enjoy, and we enjoy with pleasure. The only way that you could get fear into wargaming, there are 2 ways perhaps. Say, for example, you had some rules which said that when your Napoleonic Imperial Guard, your favourite battalion, went moving forward, using Empire rules of course, went moving forward, the enemy fired on them, and by the luck of the morale, they were routed. Now, by these rules, not Empire rules, this is a derivation of Empire rules that brings the fear factor in. By these rules, your routed favourite Imperial Guard then have to be picked up and given to your opponent, who puts them on the ground and jumps on them. That's right, isn't it? Or another one. Say, for example, all adverse reactions of the dice were reflected on the table in the usual way by the movement of figures. But say your opponent, if you were doing something that was bad, say your opponent was then allowed to come around the table and punch you in the face. Fear, isn't it? And you'd be throwing the dice. Also, the other thing too that is unreal, there's the God factor in wargaming. We're all God in a war game, aren't we? We're all standing up there, and there they all are, stretched out in front of us. They're over there. We can see the lot. Nobody's concealed, nobody's hidden. I mean, I know you can have these wars where you have very high tables and you can sit down there at eye level and everything like that, and somebody's moving your figures, and it's all right, but it does away with some of the social, the friendliness of it, the aspect of it. You could wear blinkers like a horse. We wear very dark glasses, which you can hardly see through. Well, that'd be interesting too, wouldn't it? Brigadier Peter Young That reminds me, he was a very, very good war gamer. He was also a very ruthless commando leader. Peter Young had a table 20 feet square. I let it sink in, 20 feet square. Now, a war game table ideally is 6 feet square, so you can reach the middle, isn't it? Well, Peter Young didn't have arms that reached 20 feet, but he had a series of trapdoors in his table, and all of a sudden Peter Young had vanished. And you'd see a hill in front of you, and the table was like rocking and moving, and it'd go up on Peter Young's head. And there'd be his beaming face with those pale blue, steely eyes and that little moustache. I've just come to move my guard, dear boy. He'd move his guard and knock yours over and put them up again about a foot back from where they were. The God factor. You could be in another room giving orders, but that's no fun, is it really? I mean, you don't war game to be in another room giving orders. You war game to stand around the table and laugh and joke with each other and chat and everything like that. The gentleman, I believe, is in the room now, interviewed me yesterday and asked me which game I enjoyed winning most. And I couldn't tell him because I don't care whether I win or lose. I mean, they're all fun. It doesn't really bother me at all whether I win or lose these games. And rules. Rules, undoubtedly, in my opinion, are the greatest cause of acrimony in wargaming. There is nothing else in wargaming that enrages you so much as the rules. It's usually because if it's not your game, if you're using somebody else's rules, or if you're using professionals, you didn't devise them, you see, and you have a sort of a feeling that there's something wrong with those rules because you want to do something and you can't do it by the rules. You can't. The rules won't let you do this or that. You think, rubbish. In my rules, you can do that, and it's that different interpretation which infuriates you, which makes you think, well, why am I wasting my time here? Your plans are going awry. It can't be you. It must be the rules. And wargamers devise their rules by reading military history. Now, very few wargamers have military training. I'm not being rude about this. Very few wargamers have military training to understand and appreciate the importance of ground, anything like that. And yet, they read books and they work out rules and everything. Now, they are doing this with hindsight and with today's concept of things. They are looking back with today's mind. And as you know, today's mind is very, very different picture to yesterday's mind. If I can digress a little, and I intend to because I'm always digressing when I talk, I wrote a couple of books recently about Victorian colonial warfare in India and in Africa. I've seen various people around here with them. I've signed one or two of them. Now, those books in London were published by Castle's Blandford. And I was given an editor called Rosie Anderson. Now, Rosie Anderson was lovely. She was about 30ish. She was a delightful girl. She was a typical product of an English public school. She had a lovely plummy voice. She used to come on the phone to me and she'd say, "Oh, Donald." I said, "Yes, Rosie, what is it?" "Donald, we have a problem." "What is it this time, Rosie?" "Oh, Donald, I'm very worried about the references in your books to savages and barbarians and heathens and uncivilized people." "Oh, so they were, Rosie." I said, "Do you know in 1874 when Wolseley walked into Kumasi, there were 3,000 bodies there waiting to be cooked and eaten?" "Well, Donald, dear boy, that's as maybe." She said, "Let's say a coloured gentleman bought your book. Wouldn't he be upset?" I said, "If a coloured gentleman bought my book, I think he would be very, very proud of the honour, courage and dignity shown by his forebears in the face of overwhelming technical superiority." She said, Donald, dear boy," I said, "now, I want to make a bargain. In cases where you say savage, barbarian, heathen, uncivilized, I want you to use one overall term. What have you got in mind, Rosie? I want you to say technologically deprived." When I've recovered, you mean to tell me, Rosie, you want me to say Seshiwayo's technologically deprived Zulus charged in Sanawana, the technologically deprived dervishes at Abu Clay went screaming into the square? No, I'm sorry, Rosie, I can't do it. Anyway, I was very pleased when the book came round. I went right through it to see, but I got my way and she didn't. But this is the point I'm trying to make, that she was looking at yesterday's history with today's mind, you see. And there was an aftermath to this, because with the same publisher, before I wrote these two books, I wrote another book called Victoria's Enemies, which had been out about 4 years. Nobody had complained about this book. I mean, you know, they were too polite to say they didn't like it or anything, but nobody had complained about racial connotations or anything. Then one day I get this long, bulky letter from Cashels. The Afro-Asian and Caribbean Support Group, Malik somebody and Tariq somebody else, had written in to Cashels saying that Donald Featherstone was a xenophobist and a rabid racialist because of this heathen, uncivilized bit and all that. Anyway, 7 pages of instances where I had been a xenophobist and rabid racialist. Everything. Page 32, line 5. Featherstone, never Donald Featherstone, Featherstone said, it went on like this right the way through. So I said, what are you going to do about it? He said, I want you to rebut it. I rebut it. What we're doing is taking notes of really an anonymous letter, because we don't know who these guys are. Might be some weird old man sitting in a back room with a copier printing off his own notepaper or something. So anyway, I tried to talk about it, but I had in the end had to write it. Now, those people, it was quite evident from what they wrote, that they did not want to see today in print that their countries 50, 100 years ago had lost a war. The fact that they'd lost a war in the face of overwhelming military technology, but at the same time had displayed incredible bravery. Any of you who follow, I can speak in mainly now from British colonials, any of you who follow the Sudanese war or the Zulu war, there are constant references to them rushing in with spears only into the face of machine guns, Nordenfeldts, Gatlings, guns. I mean, look at Omdurman. I think we lost about 300 men, killed, wounded and missing. Dervishes lost 16,000 killed. Apart from countless wounded, one of the greatest wiping out of an army there is. And there's a great feeling today of political correctness, which can be so rude in the face of an American lawyer, to say seems to have started here, which wants to alter everything by today's way of thinking. And this, to get back to wargaming, is what a lot of guys do in wargaming. There is an amazing tendency in wargaming for people to use tactics in a period far beyond the concept of the commanders of that period at that time. I mean, I've seen guys fighting 7-year war battles and battles of the 14th, 15th centuries, and they were using tactics and things which Phil Marshall Montgomery and Georgie Patton would have been delighted to have used. And this is one of the things that's wrong with it. And I know, listening to Jim Getz here and Scotty Bowden last night talking about their empire rules and their other rules that are coming out, that they are trying, by putting a rule system that is accurate, to prevent that happening. But there again, that brings you down to the fact that people have got to become more deeply involved, perhaps, than they want to because of those rules. They've got to learn things and do things which, to some of them, certainly to me, I'm afraid I regret to say to you, detracts from their enjoyment of the game. They want a simple, easy sort of a game. You get all sorts of queer ideas. I used to know a guy, when I first started wargaming, he was even more British than me. That's saying something. He was the most chauvinistic I've ever known. Now that guy, if you were fighting a game, he had his Brits there, and something happened to one of them, he'd say, they're routed. Routed? Routed? The Worcestershires have never routed in their lives. I'm sorry, Ted, but they're routed. Oh, no. The Worcestershires have never routed. No. And this used to go on every game. He was such a... I'll say what he was. You know, he used to give way to it. He used to think, oh dear, you know, and say, all right then, let them go back in good order. I said, no, they really went back in good order, if you insist. In fact, they used to go like that. You see, it's so hard to some people to accept things that happen in real war to their favourite units. And it's also very hard to reflect on things that happen in real war. Now you take a battle that happened in your country at Guildford Courthouse, 15th of March 1781. The British Guards were hit in the flank and the rear by cavalry, and then their commander turned his own guns on the melee to quiet it down, and later on the Guards rallied and played a prominent part in the battle. You couldn't do that in a war game. In my rules, can you with Empire rules? I'm acting as Getz's sales manager. But once you accept that wargaming can't be any more than a game, then now it's possible. It becomes possible then to cut out the dead wood. You can eliminate the aspects of the rules that bog down the battle. You cannot, it's a misconception to believe that rule attempts can cater for every factor of warfare, and that however minor those factors are, that this will result in a better game. The most enjoyable games, and let's face it, we're doing it for enjoyment, aren't we? I mean, we're not doing it because we want to study deeply to see exactly how the Circassian Lancers managed against some things in 1642. We're doing it because it's a game. We're doing it for pleasure. We do it because we want to. And if you want a game to run smoothly and relatively quickly without anachronistic, petty or unrealistic hitches and rules, then you've got to try and cope with the fact that some factors, you must accept that some factors need not be bothered with, that you, not exactly not bothered with, but you can soft pedal on them a bit. If you truncate with everything, now you take an example. You take a rule that controls the reaction of a unit when, one, the commander is nearby, or B, he is absent. Now, in theory, this may sound realistic, but you take it to its logical conclusion in the light of the fact that we're trying to operate as realistically as possible on the battlefield. Now, why not go further and discover, one, if that commander is incompetent? I mean, what's the good of subtracting one or adding one to your rules if the guy's incompetent, if he's a bloody fool? You see, and there are a lot of them around, or you can pick up any history book and find one. I mean, you can. So every time you turn. In 1914, before the Battle of Mons, Smith-Dorrien was told by French, the British commander, to take up his position on the Mons-Condé Canal. Smith-Dorrien said to French, "Am I in a defensive or offensive role, sir?" So he said, "Don't be impertinent." That's one thing. Now, that commander may be stupid. He may permanently or temporarily be wrong or be in a bad state of health. He might have a hangover. He might have had a row with his wife. On telephone today, of course. But there's all sorts of reasons why that man might not be on part on that particular moment. Then you can take into consideration the fact that he might be hated by his men who lack confidence in him. And I know plenty of officers. I know one officer in my regiment. I was more frightened of him than I was of the Germans. And if he'd have said anything to me, I'd have gone running happily well, not happily, but I'd have gone running reluctantly towards the Germans, but I would have gone because he said it, because I was more scared of him than I was of the enemy. And this is the basis of discipline in the British Army throughout the ages, really. You're more frightened of the sergeant majors, going back to the days when they marched behind you with halberds and prodded you with them and you wouldn't go forward. It's far more likely that a force will behave badly, perform badly, if they haven't had any breakfast.
You don't want to eat 25.
Now, if you haven't had any breakfast, you don't feel like it. There's a rule for that. I mean, I can have a rule which says add 2 if you didn't take 2 off if you didn't have any breakfast. Something like that. How far are you going to take it? I mean, add another 1 because we haven't got any snacks. Talking of food in the army, another digression. When I was in North Africa and we first went over an Operation Torch, we were up in a farmyard. The food was ever so slow coming up. And we were all hungry. And I remember a guy called Corporal Stacey in my regiment went walking across this filthy, muddy farmyard with a plate of crusts of bread to the officers' mess, you see. And one fell off in the mud. And a cat and a rat or something, a lot of things that went scrambling for, but I got it first. And I wiped it off, my hand, and I ate this bread. And when I finished, I thought, it's terrible. Fancy doing that. If ever I get out of this alive, I'm never going to be hungry again. And anybody here who's ever had a meal with me will bear in that fact. We used to have this business with pluses and minuses, you know, +2 for this, +1 for that, -1 for that. And it got so bad, we had this great big long list, it got so bad that we devised an abacus. You know what an abacus is? A Chinese counting thing where you get wires and you get beads on it. Now, amongst our wargaming guys at that time was a guy called Peter Manning, who designed figures for Neville Dickinson's miniature figurines. Now, Peter Manning was a lovely guy, but he cheated all the time. He didn't cheat sort of in a cheating way. He didn't cheat to win, he just cheated because it's second nature to it. He would always move 9 inches instead of 7 inches. His troops' guns would always fire 3 or 4 inches further because his rule always seemed to stretch out. And when you picked him up and said, you know, can't do that, Peter, I said, oh, all right, then he went quite happily. He never took offence, you see. Well, we got this abacus, and we had this length of wire with 2 beads fixed on the end there. We had all these beads on it, you see. And everybody had their abacus, and you'd hold it up there, like a punch of some things all around the table, same holding their abacus up, and you'd say, right, one arm, -1, -2, boom, boom, +2, like that, you see. And you down there. Peter Manning devised a method of tilting his so everything went down to the plus. Then another thing. One of our wargamers is a very up-and-coming, well, not up-and-coming, really got there. He's a very wealthy man, he's a very leading man, works for one of the nobility in England, and he's on boards and committed and like that. Lives in a beautiful big house. One day, he was standing there, plodding away. I don't know, he said, I flog my brains to death all day to earn a living. I come and flog them to death at night to have fun. And we thought, yes, this is right. This is right, you do. So we decided to simplify our rules, and we worked very hard on them, and we got them down to a very basic, simple level, as Duke here will know. Can I tell him about that thing at last year? Duke, Historicons 2 years ago, had this marvellous game with this great long Khyber Pass stretching about 24 feet up there. It was absolutely a joy to look at. And there were 2 British brigades, just correct me if I'm wrong, I think I've got it, 2 British brigades advancing, you see, and there were all these Afridis, Ghazis, Baluchis, whoever they were, all around there, you see. And these 2 British brigades advancing. Well, this was about 9 o'clock in the morning it started. So Duke said to me, I want you to command a British force. I said, I've got to do a talk at 10 o'clock. It's all right, he said. I've got 2 brigade commanders for you, give them orders. So I gave these 2 brigade commanders orders. I said, I want you to move up there and you give support. When they've moved, you move next and he gives you support, you see. And like that. So I go away and I give my lecture. And I come back, about 2 hours later, about 9 inches on the table. So I sort of look at it, I hang around a bit, and then I go and have some lunch, and I go and give another talk, and I come back, and they must be all 2 feet on the table. It's right, isn't it, Duke? And it got through to the evening, and that beautiful terrain, nobody had got further than about 3 feet into it. Well, I was so sad for Duke, because you know what these terrains are like, you know his lovely figures and everything, and it was sad really, because it could have been such a good game. So I said to you, didn't I, next time, how about you and I cooperating? You provide the terrain and the things, and we'll use my rules. So we go to Kansas City last year to the Hats Off convention there with Sam Gill and his friends. And Duke brings along a similar terrain with sort of mountains and that sort of thing. It was a Foreign Legion affair. So we were going to use my rules, and I got them. We've got 3 sheets stuck up, haven't we? And Duke gives this preamble at 10 o'clock, talks to him for about 20 minutes, what's going to happen, sort of thing. And then he says in a sceptical sort of a way, Don, we're using Don's rules. Don says we'll get this over in 2 hours, you see. He said, well, we'll have to see, won't we? Well, Jim was there and Bob Pavlik, yeah, and they were sort of masterminded. Everybody had a unit. Well, we started at 20 past 10, and we finished at 12 o'clock, didn't we? And everybody went outside to the plaza, to a copy shop, and took copies of these sheets. of these sheets.
But there's a postscript to this now.
There
is a postscript to this. I must tell you, after that, for those of you who were here last year, you will remember the big Suzanne game out in the front of this area right down there. And on the wall was a window blind that Pavlik had suggested I fill out. And you'll notice at the top it said, with courtesy to Mr. Featherstone. And we used those rules And we had about 20 feet long by 6 feet. And even without you, we finished in 4 hours.
Well, they're slick, you see. They're, I mean, to the perfectionist, he can pick holes in them. They might lack the finer points that he wishes to see. But if you want a quick, reasonably realistic game, the simple rules. I'm not boosting my rules. I'm not in business selling rules, anyway. Simple rules suit some people's temperaments. They certainly suit mine. And the thing you can do about it is, if you get one cardinal system, you can then overlay onto it the attributes and the specific aspects of the period in question. And what we've done is to do I did this very big. We do a series of charts. Every eventuality has a percentage chance of occurring. Say you're charging a square, break a square, covering either throw 2 dice, score 90. They've got a 90% chance of not breaking the square. The guys in the square have only got to throw 10 because they've got a 90% chance of staying put. That's about the simple basic thing, and it's very general. And you work it that way, and you can adjust it for any period. We've got sets of these rules. I've got my Romans, and I've got my Gauls, and I've got my 70 Years' War, and I've got all the figures on the shelves. And each box there's a packet, and that's the rules. And it works like a dream. Anybody here, and some of you have, I think, have used them, you know this. Now, all we're dealing with at the moment, and all I've dealt with, is the parochial aspects of wargaming. I've just dealt with the nitty-gritty, the stuff that makes it work and makes it go, with which we're familiar in our own various ways. Now, but there's more to it than that. This morning, a lady from the Wall Street Journal was talking to me outside here, and I said to her, now look, whatever you write in your journal, make sure you stress the fact that this is a war game. Don't say it's a war game, because in this age of political correctness, there are so many occasions when a mother, perhaps, who's very careful for the welfare of her children, they're going to come home and want to buy soldiers for war game. Now, war to most women is anathema. War to a woman is a terrible thing, because although it's the men who go out and get killed, because you've got bombing and things now, so everybody's in it really, the women suffer very badly. They lose people, and they have to display fortitude, and you've only got to have been in London during the Blitz to see it, ideally. And women aren't going to like, and this is going to increase with this political correctness that is creeping into our lives. Mothers aren't going to like their children fighting war games. So you've got to stress the fact that we are not playing war. And I said to this lady, you are not playing war. This is a social exercise. This is a means of people getting together. Everybody you see in this place is here because they've got one mutual thing. They like wargaming. And they're all here. They're all shapes, sizes, sexes, nationalities. I was in Holland about 2 months ago at Eindhoven at a wargaming convention. The least said about it, the better. But one thing that did impress me very much with it, there was a table, big table. Bob Coggins was running a war game. Now Bob was there, and 2 or 3 other of your countrymen. I knew there were some British soldiers from BAOR, from wargaming clubs there. There were some Germans, there were some French, there were some Belgians, and of course there were some Dutch. Now, I was standing there looking at it like I'm looking at you, and it suddenly dawned on me when I looked at this, I couldn't, apart from people I knew, I couldn't say, he's German, he's Dutch, he's American, he's British. They all look the same, because they're all white and all wearing, let's say, reasonably civilised clothes, but I don't know about today. Anyway, there they were, and this is because wargaming is an international affair. It's an ageless affair. You can wargame at any age, and you can wargame in any nationality, and that, I think, is the basis of this thing. This is what we're doing. This is, if I'm proud of anything that I've done in wargaming, I'm proud of the fact that it's got people together. There were 6 of us in Britain when I started. I don't know how many there are now. Not as many as you got over here, but we all got together, and we're all together here because we've got one common interest, haven't we? And we're all friends together. I mean, you can go to most places in life today. Life is a hard thing today. There's vandalism, I'm sure there is. Your country, there is in mine. And at a drop of the hat, guys pick up glasses and smash them and push them in people's faces. Guys get knifed and everything. But when did you last hear of anybody in a war game getting a glass pushed in his face in any of these conventions or getting a knife stuck in him? You don't get it. And the thing that you hear most if you walk around here is laughter. You can't go much better than making people laugh, can you? Now, it's proven by this very thing that we're doing now. I'm a Brit talking to an American audience, and we're all joined here together because of this mutual love. And I can say to you, what I expect you've said to yourself sometimes, what would I have done with my life if I hadn't discovered wargaming? And this is a very interesting question when you come and think about it. What would you have done with your life if you hadn't discovered wargaming? You might have found something else. It wouldn't have been so compelling, probably. You might become a devotee of television, or you might be a great guy for slumbering in a chair. I mean, you might have had a more successful marriage. But, you know, there's so much about it. And being serious at the moment, I know this from personal experiences. Most of you know, I had a 28-year-old son who was a wargamer and was killed 3 years ago this August. And it was reported by most of my friends with the wargaming journals and everything like that. And lots of people wrote to me. And that was in August. I came over here the following July to Historica. That was 2 years ago. And I think at least 100 people came up to me who walked around. You all come up to me now and you talk, hello God, you know, will you sign this, or I've read your books and all that sort of thing. You all say nice things. Nobody's ever said anything nasty to me yet. But guys were coming up to me and they were saying two things. One of them or the other. And I said, I want to thank you for getting me started in wargaming. And they were saying, Jim, sorry to hear about your lad. Now, I was so touched by that because you are American and you don't display British reticence. In Britain, people don't say things like that because they're frightened of embarrassing. You know, everybody sort of walks on the other side of the street because they're frightened of embarrassing. Now, I was very touched with that, and this is symbolic of my relationship with all of you. Knowing you and coming over here late in my life has brought a new dimension to my life. It really is great. And being wargames has brought a new dimension to your lives. I mean, the way you're going around spending money here today, you're going to be starving for weeks. You're going to get your mortgage foreclosed. You're going to have such big bank charges on your overdrafts that you won't know whether you're coming or going. But overall, and I speak here to the ladies sitting here, your wives are happy with it really, because while you're wargaming, you're not boozing or running a mistress, are you? You haven't got time, have you? Time you're painting and you've got your rules and you've gone here and you've gone there. I mean, no respectable mistress would put up with it, would she? Now, wargaming isn't just soldiers on a table. Wargaming has innumerable fringe benefits. There's reading, of course. You learn about what you're doing by reading, and you take up a hobby, take up a period, you get interested. Now, Jim gets some he's got his mind obsessed with the Crimean War. You see, and he keeps looking in bookshelves, the books on the Crimea, and I said, don't buy any, when I get home I'll send you some out there. And you get this, you walk around in the day, you're thinking about it all, this new period you're going to take up this in, whatever anybody says to you, whether it's at work or at home or anything like that, you're not really interested. You know, when your boss says to you, has an invoice gone out yet, Smith? You think to yourself, well, yes, of course, at Inkerman, there was the, and it's like that. You get these obsessions, you see, and you read about it all. There's this most marvellous thing of all, of walking battlefields. Now, I have, for the last 30 years, been walking the battlefields of the world. I've walked battlefields in 22 countries of 3 continents. I've walked nearly 300 battlefields with marvellous guys, marvellous people. The things that have happened to me on battlefields are beyond description. And they're wonderful, they're all wonderful. I've got dozens of photographs of cornfields to prove it. All pictures of present day battlefields are cornfields. And you have to look at it, and if you're not careful, you can cheat. You can say that's Salamanca, no, it's not Albuera. Oh, you didn't look on the back and you've forgotten to write what it is. But walking battlefields is a joy. And I've got so much pleasure out of that. You get around different places. I've been to I've been to South Africa, I've been this time here, I've been up to Ontario with Jim, I've been around your fields here, I've done the Peninsula War, Spain and Portugal about 13 or 14 times, I've done France and Germany, and you know, it's really great. And that is another thing, you see, your wife gets you off her back. See, while you're over there, she gets a rest. See, my wife has a theory that before I'm going on these trips, either because I'm worrying about them, or because I do it purposely, that I'm an absolute so-and-so. And she has been known to say to me, I'm not really sorry when you go, because you're always so horrible when you go, and I don't miss you so much. She hasn't said it lately, though. And she always leaves me a note, my wife. When I go away on these trips, she always puts a little note in my washing bag, my sponge bag with my razor and that sort of thing. And it always says, you know, I'm going to miss you and enjoy yourself and don't take any risks. And she always puts at the bottom, I love you really. Always. Military visits, visiting people's houses, weekends in people's houses, fighting war games, they're great. I don't do so much of it these days because I've got a parochial sort of interest in wargaming, and I fight mostly in my house with my own rules, and I've got a bunch of tolerant guys who accept this. You can have societies and groups. Now in Southampton, in the 1960s, we started the Wessex Military Society, and we used to have a room in the local Temperance Institute, which caused a considerable amount of amusement among some of the older members of the club, but there was a good pub called the Cricketers just round the corner, so it all worked out. Now, those guys in that club, I still meet them. I stayed in Eindhoven in Holland a few weeks ago with one of them, who I remember in that club when he was 16, and his girlfriend, he's got 2 children at English universities, his girlfriend, 16, should come and make the tea for us. And they've grown up. Now, this club is still in existence, but it takes a different form now, because when it started, we used to meet Saturday afternoons, and we'd meet at 2 o'clock, and we would have a guest speaker. Stuff has been, David Chandler, all sorts of people come, and they used to talk to us. And about 4:30, 5 o'clock, we used to do wargaming until about 10 at night. Now, the younger element, my son prominent amongst them, didn't really like this. They didn't want to sit and listen to people talking intelligently, academically and learnedly to them. They wanted to wargame. So, in 1969, after about 5 years, we have an annual, no, 1972, we have an annual general meeting, and all those little devils combined together and did a coup d'etat. They voted all of us out. All the 16-year-olds voted all the seniors out, and they were all, there was a 17-year-old lad was the president, and somebody else took my job as secretary, that thing you see. So my lot, the senior lot, we left and went to a big hotel and formed this luncheon club. And now, every month, we have a luncheon club. We're now at the Royal Southampton Yacht Club, we've gone up in the world, and we have this luncheon club. And we have some famous military personage there who has lunch with us and then talks to us afterwards. And this is great. We get people coming, we bring the wives up. We had our last speaker was a senior British woman soldier in Great Britain, Brigadier Gal Ramsey. She is the commander of the Aldershot district. She has the Paras and commandos under her, and some very hot units under her wing. And she was telling me she was a real dish too. And she was about 39, a really attractive woman. And she was telling me she's had a lot of trouble from the senior officers there because she got the job in the face of opposition of 20 senior officers, male officers. She's had a lot of trouble with them. She's also going through a divorce. I don't know whether that's because her husband's only a colonel and she's a brigadier. But anyway, she came and she talked to us about British role, about women's role in the British Army. And it was very interesting because we know over here, or we believe over here, that you have your ladies in your services on a par with men, don't you? They are the same, they do the same thing, and I don't believe you're allowed in combat. And she said to us that she did not believe that women should be allowed in infantry units and in teeth units, and certainly not in armour. She said if only because in a tank there are certain bodily functions which make life difficult. See, well, the mind boggles at thinking about all this, and I can say, well, I will say it. I can think of a lot of tank crews in my unit. If you'd have put a woman in that tank amongst them, the war would have gone to pieces. We've also got a military dining club. And a military dining club meets in the officers' mess of a naval establishment in the town, and we meet every month. And we're a band of brothers. We sit there and we drink wine and we chatter merrily away, and we have a guest there each time. We've had some fantastic guests there. and we got some marvellous members. We had, when we were in the when Britain was in the Falklands, we had a destroyer, the Ardent sunk. And Captain Alan West, the commander of the Ardent, was the last one off, and he walked along the keel and stepped into a boat, didn't even get his shoes wet, and got ashore. Now, Alan West is a fantastic man, and after the Falklands War, he was walking along the towpath of the Thames, and he dropped some very important documents, which, in a strange sort of way, were picked up by a reporter, a newspaper journalist walking behind him. And they got a lot of publicity, and he was court-martialed. Now, his boss, Admiral Sir Jeremy Black, who was commander of the Home Fleet, who we know because he's been one of our guests, he said to us, Alan West, he said, it's the finest officer in the British Navy. He said, those documents had to be made public. He said, and Alan West made sure that they got in the papers. He said, and he risked his career. Well, he was only admonished, and he got the command of the Bristol, which was a Portsmouth at the time, another nuclear destroyer, I think. And he invited us all down. We had dinner on the Bristol there. That was great fun. Now, Alan West came to our dining club, and he's sitting there, and he talked about the Falklands and that. And then, as is the custom of this dining club, the talk got around to different things. And the subject was the army aiding the civil power. See? Now, probably a lot of you know, in the 1920s, 1919, a General Dyer in India at Amritsar ordered his troops to fire on the mob, who couldn't get out of this enclosure, and there were a lot of them killed, and it caused quite a lot of trouble. And Dyer left the army, but the British public had sufficient confidence in Dyer to vote him a sum of £20,000, which was a lot of money in those days. Now, we talked about this, and then Captain Alan West said, God, there was another instance, wasn't there, he said, in Calcutta in about 1938, he said, when the troops fired on the mob. And sitting opposite him was an old boy, he's about 80, Colonel Hugh Cook, who commanded the South Staffordshire Regiment on D-Day and took them in. He's sitting there puffing at his pipe. As a matter of fact, it was me who gave the order to fire. That's lovely, isn't it, when you think of that? I mean, that's like talking to Wellington about Waterloo. And you get these things. There's one or two people that you've been around dinner, haven't you? I remember when you came over. And if any of you gentlemen come to England and you get my name and address to somewhere, give me a ring, and you are always welcome to come along to our dinner if you happen to be in England on the third Wednesday in the month. We'd love to see you there. We really would, and that is perfectly true. Now, I've been rambling on about everything, and I'm supposed to be talking about my philosophy of wargaming. So, I'd better sort of tell you my background in wargaming. I know you've got books and that, and I've written these books and everything, and my philosophy of this hobby is moulded by the innumerable incidents and events which began when I was a small boy. My mother and father were separated, and my father was a man with a conscience, so to assuage that conscience, every birthday and Christmas, my father used to send me countless boxes of Britain's soldiers. I had more Britain's soldiers than all the other boys in the neighbourhood put together. I had so many Britain's GS wagons and pontoon section ambulance wagons, I could put a great convoy right across the room there. I used to have forts all over the place with, so I used to make forts, and every time I found an Irishman, I made a fort. And I spent my boyhood playing odd sort of battles, and I used to shoot howitzers at them, you know, the Britain's howitzer with the screw shell. And you level it up, boom, like that, and you get 6 foot, 9 foot, or 12 foot. I used to shoot those things out, and that was great, you see. And I was sort of ambling along there, all serene and happy. And one day I went to the library, and on the shelf, to my amazement, I saw a book called Little Wars. And I got it down, and life changed. In life, you know, there are certain milestones you think. You can say, right, my life changed when I got married, my life changed. Well, my life changed in the beginning when I found Little Wars. And that was my Bible. So much so that I was about 10 or 11 at the time. So much so that I wargamed and played around with these soldiers. I was 16 or 17. Then I discovered they were girls. And it all became sort of a little silly playing with model soldiers when you go chasing up the local dance hall and that. But I mean, you know, we were all very meek and mild by today's standards, but it was fun in its way. And I didn't really have much to do with it. And then when the war broke out, I went in the army, and I came on leave one time, and I had a younger brother. And I don't know why, we played a battle. We played the Battle of Hook's Farm. And I had more or less the same figures that Wells had in it. We played this battle on the floor. Then I got the book out of the library, and I took it back off leave with me. And I wrote them a letter and said that I was very sorry I took it back, and only enemy action had got destroyed, and I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm prepared to take money on the fact that I'm the only soldier in the British Army who went through the North African returning campaigns with little wars in his knapsack. And I still got it at home too. Anyway, I came home from the war, and I'd had enough of wars, and you know, the usual things happened. I got married and started raising a family. Then one evening, on the something of August 1957, I opened the local paper, and there's this picture of a serious, respectable man kneeling on the floor, and an equally serious-faced, plump lady facing him, with the whole place full up with 54mm figures. And it said there that this man, Tony Bath, Southampton accountant, very keen on fighting battles as a model soldier, but he couldn't find anybody to fight with except his wife. See, so I phoned him up. I rushed out to the phone and phoned him up. And on the Monday night, I arranged to go and see him. Well, on the way out, my car broke down. It's just as if fate was trying to say, Featherstone, don't get involved. I'm really glad I got the car started again. I wouldn't be here if I didn't do it. And anyway, I finally got to him, and we started doing this business. And he had 54mm plastics and figures and all that stuff. Then he had flats, and we were on the floor. And I remembered years before seeing in a model shop in Southampton a lot of boxes of SAE figures, Swedish African Engineers, some of the older guys who remember it here. And there they were all up there. I went round to this model shop and I said, about 2 years ago, you had a lot of boxes of soldiers in the window. Did you sell them? No. And they said, no, they're in the cellar. So I said, would you like to shed them out? So I bought the lot. And I took them home. And I remember there was everything there. There were pilots, and there were American Revolution figures, there were Red Indians. I converted them all to American Civil War figures. I got started in American Civil War. I converted them all to that. Then I discovered a guy called Spencer Smith, Ronald Spencer Smith in England, who was a traveller for Britons, who used to use the figures made by a man called Holger Eriksson in Sweden, who was a very upmarket figure maker. He used to use his 30mm figures and make moulds out of them and cast in plastic, and which he sold, you see. And he used to go around like Guy Fawkes, you know, hiding around corners. But he was frightened of Holger Eriksson suing him. He was frightened of Britons finding out that he was doing it. And he was generally timid. Anyway, I used to get buying figures off him, and one thing led to another, and we got on that way. And I like plastics, but I was at a convention once with David Chandler, and we were fighting Borodino. And in this weekend place, where there were all these courses, there were some ladies doing quilting courses, things like that, and men doing wood turning and everything. And we were doing this Borodino thing, and it was running on through, and they'd all finished that Saturday afternoon, and I came and watched it. And one old lady standing there, she'd run up, what are light infantry? She said, well, they're the plastic ones, madam. But it was very difficult finding figures. There came a time when you couldn't get any more figures. So then we started making moulds. We got plaster Paris, and then we found out about Leo Cronin and Silas Stoner, and we started making the moulds. And I've got some absolute atrocities at home that I made. But I've got every single figure I've ever had at home. And we started. Then I discovered Scrooby. And it all came about because Tony Bath had a subscription to Wargaming Digest. And he lent me this book, and I stayed up after night reading it till my wife nearly divorced me. And I got in touch with Scrooby, and I took a subscription out, and then, as some of you may know, Scrooby and I started running it. He ran 2 issues a year over here, and I ran 2 issues in England, and we sort of interchanged them. Well, that went on for a bit, and then Jack Scrooby, who, if nothing else, was a slightly mercurial character, decided he didn't want to carry on with it, and he was going to chuck it in. And I thought, well, rather than chuck it in, I'll run it. So I started running it, and then we got arguing. Jack and I used to have a lot of arguments. Because, I don't know, I can't remember what it was now. And he finished altogether with Wargaming Digest, and that finished. And then I started Wargaming's newsletter. And a lot of you were subscribers. I can see guys in here who I know were subscribers, with Jerry Eberling over there, and a lot of you. And we got on fine with it. And the figures we fought with this morning out there in this little game, I had a guy in my son's class at school, a boy called Philip Hatton. He used to paint my figures for me for 5p each. Well, 5p, I can't translate, that's our old money. I can't even attempt to translate it, but it's very, very little, I can assure you. He used to paint those figures for me. Well, that lad now is a very well-known major in a hush-hush way in the SAS. He used to paint figures for me, and and pack up my books and rules on Saturday and post them out to you. All you people who used to send me in post rules, he used to send the stuff out to you. And you know, it went on like that. I wasn't a very good painter, so I'm pleased that he painted it. And people came around. Peter Gilder came on the scene. The first time I ever met Peter Gilder, he got his leg in plaster. He had a cycle racing accident. And we decided that there was a much better use of the plaster of Paris on his leg to make moulds. Peter Gilder started. And I think Peter Gilder in our country did more for wargaming than anybody else. Just as I think that Duke Cypriot has done more for wargaming than anybody else in your country. And that may be a matter of opinion, but Duke and I have a sort of a relationship, don't we, Duke? We go around praising each other. Anyway, we used to mix figures, we used to have 25 mils and everything like that. Peter Gilder was told by Charlie Staddon that if you're going to make figures, never make them the same size as anybody else's. Always make them a little bit bigger. Then everybody's, if they want your figures, which are going to be the best, then they've got to change all their figures over to match. They can't buy some of yours and some of somebody else's. So if you look at Peter Gilder's connoisseur figures, they're always bigger than anybody else's. And this is how it went on. You know, we had 30 millimeters, we had 25, now it's 15 mils. And when I was in Eindhoven the other week, I was looking at Ross Heroic, at Michael Armour's stuff there, Greg Scott. I was very, very impressed with these little tiny figures he got there. He's got this little tiny minute end scale, he calls it gun crew. They're absolutely right, you can put them on your thumb. And there's 4 men there, and 2 of the men are standing around with their hands over their ears. Absolutely, I was really impressed with this. Well, it all went on, and I've been rambling on a long time, and I'd like to conclude on a sort of fairly personal note. I am very proud that I'm invited over here. I'm very proud that I've had something to do with getting war games going. I'm proud of the books I've written. I'm proud of the times when you guys come up to me and say, I've read your book, War Games, and it got me started. Because when you come to think of it, if you've ever cleared out anybody who's died, you've cleared out their possessions. My mother-in-law was a lovely London lady. She was a real old country lady, and she died a couple of years ago. And we cleared that lady's house out on a Monday morning. My wife and my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law's husband cleared it out in one morning, all her treasures there. And I thought to myself, you know, there's that lovely lady, she was good and kind to everybody. Nobody except my wife and I, perhaps, and maybe my the other daughter, will ever talk about her, will ever remember. And to leave something behind you that people remember you for, to me is really important. I was terribly thrilled last year when I was at Fort Leavenworth, and they tic-tacked on the computer, and I found how many books of mine had got in the Staff and Command School library at Fort Leavenworth. Yeah, and, you know, things like that. I'm very proud of the fact that I've left some sort of a memorial behind that every one of the books I've ever written is in the British Museum. Every book that's ever written is in the British Museum with a name. And I'm very proud of that. It gives me a glow. It doesn't give me anything like as much of a glow as being here with all of you. I thoroughly enjoy being here with you people. I have a love affair with Americans. I go around giving talks to Rotary clubs in England, and the talk that goes down the best is called My Love Affair with America and the Americans. I've got 3 or 4 dates with it when I get back home. So really, I'll finish this off by saying that this title is very, very anachronistically Featherstone's Philosophy of Wargaming. It should really be How Wargaming Moulded My Philosophy of Life. So thank you for being so attentive.
Thank you.